Again, I'm Sharon Fuller, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Avian Science Center. I've worked with them since 2007 on a variety of different projects, most recently summer and fall banding on the MPG ranch. And the Avian Science Center does bird monitoring and research throughout the entire state of Montana, and are currently involved in 5 different projects on the MPG ranch, which I will briefly discuss today. So our first project is summer bird banding, and this was a project that was begun on the ranch in the summer of 2011. And it's actually part of a larger program that we run through the Avian Science Center that was started in 2007. And this is our bird's eye view education program. So this is an education program that was designed to teach the public about habitat degradation and loss along the Clark Fork watershed in the Clark Fork watershed due to mining practices that were done in the Anaconda Butte area. But we didn't just want this to be an education program, we wanted to add a research component to this project as well. So we decided to use a standardized protocol called MAPS, which actually can measure this, the habitat, the health of the habitat that we're trapping in by looking at breeding success. So just to give you an idea of how our stations are run, this is, we have 3 other stations besides this station, and this is an aerial view of the MPG ranch down on the floodplain. You can see the Bitterroot River down here off to the left, and each one of these red dots represents one of our mist nets that we set up. And I don't know if you can see the numbers, but there are 10 nets that we set up, and the corresponding numbers are first being species diversity that each net captured during the summer, and then how many birds each net caught. So we use what are called mist nets, and basically they look like oversized volleyball nets. They're 12 meters long by roughly 2.5 meters tall. And according to the MAPS protocol, we run these stations every 10 days. We come and set up these 10 nets in the exact same spots, the exact same net, and we open our nets at sunrise, and we run them for 6 hours, checking the nets every half hour or so, depending on weather. So we use a method that's called passive mist netting. And really, we rely on the invisibility of these nets to capture our birds. We're not putting out any lures for them, no food, or using callbacks to call them into the net. We want to know who is using this habitat when we're not there. So in theory, we place our nets in places that have a lot of vegetation around them and we think is good habitat for birds to be utilizing. So in theory, these birds are going to be moving between bush to bush or tree to tree, and so we hope this bird will run into the mist net, get caught into a pocket, and get tangled up like this black-capped chickadee. And this bird looks really tangled, and it is. And that's why we have specially trained staff like Craig Baloo here. He's one of our seasoned biologists that has worked a number of years on our summer program, and all of our staff are carefully trained to be able to safely and quickly extract these birds out of our nets. And again, we do check our birds or check our nets every half hour or so and clear the nets of birds at that time. So once the birds are extracted from our nets, we bring them back to our banding station, which you can see here is basically just a table that's set up in the middle of our site. And it has a bunch of different measuring equipment and recording data abilities. And then we also have bands to place on the bird's legs. So the first thing we do when we bring a bird back to the station, oftentimes we have groups like this Audubon Society, because we are an education program, we'll have groups that are waiting for us. And this is really exciting for the groups as well as the people that are working at the station, because we never know what we're going to see or what we're going to capture until it happens. And so the people that get to come and visit are kind of discovering things as we discover them too. So the first thing we do when we get a bird back to the station is determine what species it is. And according to what species we have in hand, each species gets a different size band placed on its leg. All of these bands are aluminum alloy. They're really lightweight, and they spin around the ankle of the bird. And all of these bands also have 9 digits imprinted on them that no other bird is ever going to have in its life. So that way, if this bird is ever caught at a different station or at our station again, we'll have the information of when it was caught, where it was caught, and what conditions it was in at the time that it was caught. And at the end of the season, we send all of our information into the USGS to have as a giant database through the bird banding lab, so that information can be retrieved at any time. So just some results of our 2012 banding season. We conducted 7 banding events, and we ran the stations from June 4th to August 8th. And we captured at that time a total of 280 birds with 34 different species. This was far and above any of our other sites in both captured numbers and species. And then our most frequently captured birds were the house wren, yellow warbler, American goldfinch, and gray catbird. Of other interest is that we did catch 14 individuals from the 2011 season. 6 of those were gray catbirds, 3 black-capped chickadees, 1 red-breasted nuthatch, and 1 downy woodpecker. But one interesting thing that kind of raised a red flag this season is that our most frequently captured bird was the house wren in both 2011 and 2012. With 51 individuals both seasons, but we didn't recapture a single one of those birds. So that's a little bit of a concern and something that we definitely want to be looking at next season. So since we are looking at breeding success to measure habitat, I thought I would throw in a graph showing what we saw this year. You can see the blue on the right are all adults, and then throughout the season we start to see juveniles popping out of nests and fledging. So this indicates that this is an area that is able to support breeding habitat for many species. I think 55% of our adults that we did capture at the time were in breeding condition at the time they were caught, and that's really high. So in addition to our summer banding, we added a new component this year with Geo Locators. And this is a picture of one of our Geo Locators. They're tiny data loggers. They measure daylight. So they measure, they record when the sun rises and when the sun sets. And that can give us an indicator of longitude versus longitude. So our question with this project was, where are some of our birds overwintering that we're capturing at the site? So we chose to focus on the gray catbirds. And we chose this species in particular because, first of all, it was the right size for the size of the units. The weight was appropriate. And also, it is one of our highest captured species. We caught 15 adult birds. This did include all 4 of our sites, but the majority of them were found on the MPG ranch. We caught 10 individuals on the MPG ranch. We also chose this species because they show a strong fidelity to nest sites. So that means that they do leave for the winter, but they come back year after year to breed and nest at this site. And also, we chose this species because we do have a really high recapture rate with this species, with 32% in 2012 alone. So here's a picture of one of our gray catbirds fixed with a geolocator. That's what it looks like. It fits like a backpack on the bird. As you saw in the picture before, there's stretchy nylon that goes around the legs and then fits on the back. Doesn't hinder the bird. It's very lightweight, and the bird can still fly and move around as needed. But the thing with these geolocators is they're not like satellite transmitters in that they can beam up information into a satellite and we can retrieve it at any time. We actually have to recapture the bird the next season in order to take the unit off the bird, download the data, and then get the information we need. So we wanted a way in which we could track these birds in case we don't passively misnet them again next summer. So we color banded each bird individually so that we can find them and then target for them if we need to. So our next project is fall bird banding. And this is probably the most exciting project for those involved at the Avian Science Center. Everyone's really excited about this project because for anyone who has experienced the phenomenon of migration, you know that it is just an amazing event to be a part of and to witness and to be able to do some research on. So we started a pilot year in 2011. We ran 2 of the sites. You can see the northern floodplain site, which is the exact same site that we run in the summer, and the nets are actually placed in the same spot. And then in 2011, we also did the sheep camp site, which is right in the middle of the ranch. And then in 2012, we added an additional site just off of West Baldy Ridge. So this is going to be interesting because we can start looking at comparisons between elevation and different habitat types, as well as, you know, who's using the area, species diversity, phenology, demography, a whole bunch of different questions that is just really exciting. And that's a picture of each of the sites. So just some results. This is numbers of birds between the 2 seasons. Again, we didn't run the ridge site in 2011, so we don't have that data. But you can see that we caught a fair number of birds in 2011 compared to 2012. We do expect variability within numbers of birds between year to year, but one thing we were questioning is that this past season, the smoke in the Bitterroot Valley was just incredible. I mean, we were choking on smoke almost every day of the season, and so it'll be interesting to see in future years if we can find out if that played a part in where birds are moving and utilizing habitat. So this is a comparison in species richness between the sites, and I just wanted to point out a couple of points. On the floodplain, we saw the species richness was much greater than the other sites, far and above the other sites, but the numbers of each of those species were smaller. And then on the ridge side, the pattern was flipped around. So there was not a lot of species richness, but the species that were there, they were greater in number. And then I thought I would just throw in a little bit of phenology. We looked at a bunch of different aspects of phenology, and for those of you who don't know, it's just the timing of an event. So we looked at different bird species that actually move through the sites and their timings. We looked at the differences between the sites, but this is just a graph of between all birds that were captured between 2011 and 2012. And you can see during week, the week 4 and 5 here, there looks to be a similarity in the when the peak of birds came through. And those are mostly robins and dark-eyed juncos. And then we also had, and that is early to mid-September. And then there's another peak right here in 2011 that we just simply didn't see in 2012, and those were chipping sparrows. And we're not really sure why that happened, but we had over 130 chipping sparrows last year, and we only had about 23 over the entire season for 2012. So we're excited to, again, do another season to see what kind of patterns emerge from more data. Our 4th project on the MPG ranch is mapping songbird territories in the woody draws. And this was a pilot season that was begun just this past summer in 2012. And it was designed to measure the success of some of the restoration projects that are being done on the ranch in the woody draws. So 5 draws were selected for this project. They're highlighted in blue, and I don't know if you can read the names of the draws, so I'll just read them really fast. Sapphire, Baldy, Sheep Camp, Tongue, and woodchuck draws were our focal draws. And then there's a picture of some of the restoration along Tongue Creek. So we thought birds would be a good indicator of if suitable habitat is being created in these areas. So 5 focal species were picked for this project, and they're listed there. And again, this was a pilot year, and Kate talked a little bit about this, but we did use the iPad, and there were a lot of glitches throughout the season that were being worked out. So, so there's not a lot of data, but we were able to make some kind of cool maps looking at each of the individual focal species, and the blue dots are actual bird observations, and then the green triangles are nests that were actually found. So it'll be interesting to see how that changes throughout the restorations that are being done. Lewis's Woodpeckers is our last project that we are working on the ranch. It was a 1-year study that Megan Filling did, studying the Lewis's Woodpeckers and looking at different spatial scales. Not much is known about, especially in western Montana, why these birds choose the cavities that they choose. So again, these are cavity nesters. They like large, dead, and dying trees that are found near water. So Megan is looking at different spatial scales, and the first scale being just at the nest tree alone, then a 50-meter plot for the next spatial scale around the nest tree, and then a large landscape scale. Are there agricultural lands? How far away are they from the river? And what kind of components are playing a part in their decision for choosing these nests? She's in the process of analyzing this data right now, but so do you want to add anything?
Hopefully by May or June there should be some more data available. I'm just now getting into the thick of it, so just plugging on.
One last thing I did want to mention about Megan's project, though, is that it's part of, the MPG portion is part of a larger project again, in that she looked at nests throughout the Clark Fork as well as the Bitterroot rivers and found a total of 55 nests. And 10 of those, as you can see, there's this concentration right here, which is the MPG ranch. So 10 of them were found on the ranch. And that was 20% of her study. And that's just an indicator of how important this habitat is to Lewis's woodpeckers, as well as so many other species. So again, we just want to say thank you to the MPG ranch for letting us do these valuable projects on this land, and thank you all for coming. And please come to our banding station this summer. You're all invited. It's really exciting. Thanks.